we got hand signals we do over here, so.
Interest? 45? 45? 45? Which is what? 60? You serious? Can't be 60. No, can't be 60. Okay. Yeah. No, but it's just because it's lying.
I think yeah, they're all supposed to.
Right.
You want to sit over by the mayor there? No, that's okay. I'll ask you. I will prompt you. Okay? And then you can use the mic there. That would be good. Then you don't have to. Good morning, all. I know we will have people wandering in this morning and the rest of the day, but I'd like to get us started. We have another very full schedule. We have some new faces here today. Again, I want to welcome all of those in the room and also those of us, those joining us virtually today from around the world, actually. So my name is Lisa Craig. I am the principal of the Craig Group, and to the benefit of the mayor's knowledge now, I am Mayor Pro Tem from my city. So I have great respect for the leadership of our cities attending and speaking on this really critical issue of climate change and the impacts to our cultural heritage. Before I introduce Susan to introduce the mayor, I would like to actually see if I can get Margaret and maybe one or two others of you, if you'd like, to give us a little recap or thoughts from yesterday, something that struck you as very significant from what we heard and learned from the various speakers.
The mic will work?
Yes, it'll work. He's turning it on.
Great. Okay, good morning, everyone. And for those of you who were here yesterday, I'm going to be very short. And I want to welcome our persons online. There was quite a lot going on online, and a lot of people talking about it. And I want to congratulate the IT people in particular, who have been really doing a yeoman job in getting us all over the world, which is, really what we want to do here. Okay, so in terms of yesterday, very busy day. We started with a very formal set of welcomes. We had the pleasure of having both the ambassador of the United States of America here and her husband, as well as the Minister of Planning and Development. And we did have some also welcome remarks from really on behalf of the University of Florida, and we had a sterling job by Lisa Craig in terms of moderating and keeping us together yesterday. My first takeaway was that there was so much information that we were running out of time all the way through, but that I suppose is a good thing. We started off after that with a presentation by Mr. Kishan Kumar Singh, who was talking about leadership in resilience planning. He is from, for those who don't know, he is also from the Planning and Development or Ministry, and has been leading the charge for the last 20 years. So he had a lot to say about how the whole problem and issues in particular with negotiating and networking to try and get on some kind of consensus among especially the Caribbean. And then we went straight into protecting our cultural institutions and artifacts. We had two presentations. One was online. I'm trying to remember now. I can't remember. Was that so? But anyway, two presentations there. Dr. J. Havisa. Jay, yes, wonderful presentation, especially pulling in the young people. And we're calling him Dr. J now from now on. We're Californians all of a sudden. And that, I think, prompted our young people who were in the audience, and I hope they're coming again today, to start asking questions. And then that was mainly, and he was talking about especially the Dutch islands and the Dutch group of islands. Very interesting. Now, we had a very good lunch for those of you who were here. We went into protecting our natural heritage through the mitigation and adaptation. And Ryan, Dr. Mohammed did a very good job pulling that together and trying to keep that. That was a very, very heavy session. And what was interesting is how serious the topics were, but in all cases ending with a note of hope. So I suppose that's why we're still here, right, today. We talked about the whole business. Well, I have to call him now the ocean doctor. Dr. David Guggenheim, who particularly talked about the coral, and it was very, very interesting that there was such a marked difference between the health of the coral right across the water in Cuba, very healthy coral, growing, etc., contrasting with Florida and the dying of the coral. And that, I think, was one of the pieces that really, for me, really impressed me, that it is not only about climate change, it's also what man is continuing to do in terms of runoff and pollution and so on, that man is continuing to create. Those of you who are here, I'm sure you can all take the test. What is the most irrigated crop in the United States? Anyone wants to tell me? Lawn grass, exactly. I thought that was a very, very interesting piece there. I won't go through all the presenters, but this is just what's happening. And then we had the stories of resilience. This was a virtual presentation, and that was really very good. So that's it, and then we went on a walking tour, but I didn't go, so I can't tell you about it. I just have one more thing, especially for the people online. We understand a lot of you couldn't get your questions in yesterday. We would like you to start writing your questions immediately, if you can, so that we can get the questions to the volunteers here, so they can come to the presenters. We also want to limit all our contributions to just a very quick question. No comments, because we just don't have the time. And we kept running out of time yesterday, and especially the persons online, but even some people here complained that they couldn't get their questions in. So that, please, only questions, no comments, but we have the website. So please, everybody, try and put your comments on the website so we can continue this very healthy chat. Okay? So that's it for today. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate that. And one or two other things that I would just note, I've been working in this area of climate adaptation and cultural resource protection for about a decade now. I can't believe it's been that long. But a couple of things I always hear something new at these conferences, and one of the things we really need to think about, and what I have been focusing some energy on now, and I know there was a report recently from the International Monetary Fund, Trinidad and Tobago have realized a 3.3, if I remember, percent increase in revenues, in value. And I think what we need to do is value. We need to understand the values of our heritage, our cultural heritage to our community. There are tangible values, tourism, and there are intangible values. One of the things that I actually have been working on, and one of the speakers you'll hear, Dr. Angela Shadell, and I worked on in St. Augustine, was that real value of tourism. But I heard yesterday from our ocean doctor, from Dr. Guggenheim, about cost and investment, and that concept of the carbon offset, and how that might be an investment strategy in that particular instance for restoring the oceans, but also perhaps transferable to protecting and adapting our cultural heritage sites. So we need to be creative when we think about these things and figure out how it will work for our communities and for our nations. So with that said, I am going to ask Susan Sherlin to kind of do a run through of the day, and then she will be introducing the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. His Worship Alderman Joel Martinez, Mayor of Port of Spain, Ms. Margaret McDowell, Chair of the National Trust, and National Trust Council members, Conference Planning Team, Ms. Lisa Craig, Coordinator, Ms. Kimberly Rose, others from the Craig group and partners, Ms. Kara Rup Singh, Senior Heritage Preservation and Research Officer of the National Trust, and the whole project team, Dr. Clary Larkin from the University of Florida, presenters, all presenters, participants here locally, those visiting, and also those online, the media, ladies and gentlemen, once again, good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you before the formal welcome this morning, and I want to say that today is going to be equally, I'm sure, as interesting and exciting as it was yesterday. Thank you, Ms. McDowell, for your recap. And just briefly, I'm going to tell you that we have 4 main sections today. We're going to talk about protecting our cultural heritage, moderated by Nisha Ghani. We're going to talk about protecting our built environment, moderated by Mark Franco, both fellow members of the council. And after lunch, we're going to look at resilient heritage, Trinidad and Tobago assessment and findings. That will be moderated by Kimberly Rose. And lastly, we would look at resilient Trinidad and Tobago, resilient Trinidad and Tobago from here to there, where we're going to. And that will be moderated, and there will be a panel moderated by Doug Parsons. So today, I just want, before I get the great pleasure of introducing His Worship, I want to remind you that today is World Water Day. And coming from UNESCO, I'm quite aware of the need for potable water all around the world. And it is also important that because we're talking climate change and the impacts of climate change, there is a link and there is some sort of relationship with proper potable water and the need to protect the resources and our heritage. The theme for World Water Day is accelerating change. So we can also make that happen through our discussions and what we expect for the future. We want to be very mindful of the impact of climate change and the impact on the potable water for those persons around the world. So please know that today is World Water Day. Coming from UNESCO, that's important. I want to have also the greatest pleasure to introduce and welcome my dear colleague, His Worship Alderman Joel Martinez, Mayor of Port of Spain. For more than 2 decades, Joel Martinez has rendered service to his community as a local government representative. He began his political career in 1996, where he served as a councillor for the electoral district of Paramin-Marval in Trinidad. His strong background in finance assisted him in his role in that council as chairman of finance. Following a short break from politics, Mr. Martinez returned in 2016 upon his election as mayor of Trinidad and Tobago's capital city, Port of Spain. Presently, His Worship the Mayor, Joel Martinez, is leading a council which is focused on several initiatives, including improving trade relations among entrepreneurs, fostering ties with cities across the globe, and implementing recycling initiatives. I now invite Your Worship, His Worship, Port of Spain Mayor, Mr. Joel Martinez, to welcome you all today.
Thank you very much, and for that gracious introduction. Chairman of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, Margaret McDowell, Senior Heritage and Research Officer, Kara Rup Singh, Acting Director of the Historic Preservation Program at the University of Florida, Dr. Clary Larkin, Principal of the Craig Group Partners, Lisa Craig, online participants, specially invited guests, members of the media, presenters, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. So we heard today is World Water Day. What are we doing about it? Let's drink some water, because while we have a chance, because, they indicated that the world is going to have some difficulties with water if we don't do something about it, if we don't start preserving. And really and truly, what today is about, and my objective really this morning is just to greet you and say, welcome to Port of Spain. So let me say that it is my esteemed pleasure, and I am very happy as the Mayor of Port of Spain to welcome you to the city of Port of Spain, this beautiful capital nestled in the heart of the Caribbean Sea. How does that sound? Nice. I was talking to Dr. Clary Lacan this morning. No, it's not. No, you're right. Yes, and we were talking about how happy we are as a country, and how we tend to find that what we do, when we ask people how the experience in Trinidad, we never ask them if they like Trinidad. We usually ask them if they had a good time. Because we know that Trinidad is nice. But because of climate change, which is happening to everyone around the world, humans are causing it. And this is perhaps the most serious environmental issue facing us. And it is facing us in Trinidad, it's facing the Caribbean, it's facing the Americas, it's facing Europe, it's facing Asia, and also as far as Australia and so on. So the whole world is being affected by climate change. And these words that I just said was from a mechanical engineer, Bill Nye. He said that the planet's average surface temperature has risen by 2 degrees Fahrenheit since the 1900s. This change is unrivaled by any others in recorded or estimated history. Global sea levels have risen 8 inches over the last century. In the last 2 decades alone, the rate of sea levels rising has nearly doubled, and this is a direct cause of melting ice caps and increased global temperatures. If this rise continues, entire countries such as Bangladesh could be underwater and devastated by the impact. What a thought. Can we imagine that? I guess all of us here can imagine it because we are here thinking about things like this. Now, it only takes a small group of people to start the cause and to make the changes. But we have to impact the rest of the world. So we can't just do that and do it in this room and expect that we're going to change the world or help people to change their habits and their attitudes towards the climate. So think about how the weather has changed since you were a child. Has the weather gradually turned warmer? Has it? Or colder? Perhaps you've noticed it's a bit chillier nearing Christmas. Time or hotter than usual throughout the year. These are the causes directly by climate change and global warming. Statistically, we have already seen an increase in hurricane activity and other natural disasters in the Caribbean. It's time we take a serious approach to the biggest threat that we are facing today, which is climate change. We need to pay attention to some important things like activities that cause it, enhance our resilience to the effects of these activities, and of course, have frank discussions on it, which is why we are all here today. I have taken a special interest in this initiative, which focuses on the impact of climate change on heritage sites in downtown Port of Spain and Nelson Island. This resilient Heritage Trinidad and Tobago Keeping History Above Water conference and workshop is extremely important for the city of Port of Spain and by extension Trinidad and Tobago, as it aims to serve as a model that can be replicated to increase climate resilience for heritage sites across Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean. For City Month in 2022, the Port of Spain Corporation our theme was Reimagining Our Future, a sustainable Port of Spain for all. I am therefore beyond honored to be able to speak with you all today as the Mayor of Port of Spain. I believe quality infrastructure and improved procurement processes are central to combating climate change. These steps are key to climate mitigation and adaptation methods. Port of Spain partnered with Habitat for Humanity and USAID to develop an action plan to make Port of Spain a resilient city by 2030. This is in keeping with United Nations SDGs. We have been looking at the various hazards that can occur through earthquakes and hurricanes, and that we can strengthen our resolve to ensure that we have less informal communities and more structural developments using the various methods and standards of our building codes. I have also been to a number of international forums and summits around the world where we've discussed at mayors' forums sponsored by the Inter-American Development Bank and also by CAF Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean of cities that climate action and innovation and resilience for sustainable growth of cities is necessary. Reshaping our cities and our towns have to come from the fact that we are seeing more flooding, we are seeing more earthquakes, we are seeing more devastation taking place all around the world, and people are causing it. The world by itself doesn't fix itself because we are the inhabitants of the world, so we have to do something about it. This 2-year initiative, funded by the U.S. Ambassador's Fund for Cultural Preservation and led by the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago in collaboration with University of Florida, Historic Preservation Program is a step in the right direction. Flood risk assessment and sea level rise visualizations of the project site are especially vital as flooding has been an issue in the capital of Trinidad and Tobago and many areas across our country. A proactive approach rather than a reactive one will benefit residents in the capital city of Port of Spain and across the country. One of the things that I just want to mention here is that in looking at, I walked with a little book that I got here from the Inter-American Development Bank when I was in Argentina a few months ago talking about climate change. And the book is Climate Action in Cities of Latin America and the Caribbean. And one of the things it says here, Latin America and the Caribbean is the second most urbanized region in the world. With 81% of the population living in urban areas, the high urbanization rate has led to an increased demand for transportation, high production of waste, and overconsumption of fossil fuels for energy purposes that includes electric generation, building construction, and the industrial processes. Just think of what I just said there and understanding that we are using more and more and more and more because we are growing population and the demands for more is there. But what are we replacing it with? How are we re-energizing the world, right? And we're taking from the world, but we're not giving back to the world. One of the other areas that I just want to mention before I close is in Latin America and the Caribbean. Okay. I was wondering if that was my stomach. But in Latin America and the Caribbean, the rapidly changing climate is increasing the frequency and intensity of extreme weather-related events. Majority of the Latin American and the Caribbean countries have been affected by at least one disaster per year. In the last decade, and over 50% has had 2 or more natural disasters. Alterations in monsoon systems, unexpected rains, large droughts, and a significant rise in the sea level could completely transform the landscape of coastal development after bioclimates and cause unprecedented displacement of entire cities. Are we going to sit here and wait for it to happen, or are we going to do something about it? Well, let me applaud you for coming here and deciding to do something about it. 17 million people in the Latin American Caribbean could be forced to move by 2050 without concerted climate action if we don't do something about it then, right? 300 million people in Latin America and the Caribbean will be affected by rising sea levels caused by climate change. Now, we know the Caribbean, we know Latin America, we know South America, right? If you, like me, who went down to a place called Ushuaia, which is almost at the end of the earth, you'll realize that the Antarctica is actually larger than the Arctic Circle. Are you all aware of that? And why is that so? Is it because it was always so? Or maybe it's because they have less mischief going on down there than up there. All right? They have less land space in South America, at the bottom of the earth, than it is at the top of the earth. So if you think about it, maybe we could learn something from those people down there, right? And in New Zealand and that sort of thing. And maybe transform the message upward towards the countries on the top of the earth. That because when you hear the ice caps are melting, they don't talk about the Antarctica. They really talk about the Arctic Circle, right? So maybe we can send that message. The largest lungs of the world is in the Amazon, not so? Which is South America. South America, the Caribbean, are doing their part, but we may be the first place, right, to be affected by climate change. So we have to send the message and send it loud. We have to state our position and let the world know that the Caribbean area, to start off with, is one of the nicest places on earth. And why I say that is because I did flying lessons at one time. So I was able to fly over the Caribbean and see how beautiful it is. And then I also did yachting. So I was able to see it from the sea. We are a beautiful chain of islands, just apart from each other by sea. So it gives us great opportunity to see things from a different perspective. We are doing our part. We just need to now help the world do their part. And if we reduce our risks, our waste, and manage what we have, we can set the example and show the rest of the world that we stand above a lot of what the rhetoric, because we are actually doing something about it. It is my hope that this workshop, it presents, and all topics that it will discuss are not trivialized, because the decision that we make today will impact tomorrow significantly for generations to come. We are at a critical crossroad, so now is the time for us to work together as a community and get it right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was very inspiring, and we know you do have to go to the water conference. I'm sure you will be giving a message there just as inspirational, but we look forward to perhaps coming back and listening to some of the other speakers as they share information specifically about Port of Spain, because you'll be very interested in seeing that. So, and thank you all for joining us this morning. We have our next panel that'll be coming up here, and again, just a moment.